tough subjects are tough to talk about. And oftentimes they get swept under the rug because everyone is so worried about saying the wrong thing, even when they have the right intention. And so in the venture capital world, there is a lot of conversation happening and a lot of women, powerful women, stepping up to help to change that conversation. So things are definitely trending in the right direction. And my encouragement to everyone around me is to continue to talk about it and to continue to change the thought process.
From Evia Events, it's Hillary Saves the World, a podcast about how people are using their positions, passions, and pocketbooks to change their worlds, one mission at a time. I'm Hillary Laney, and today's mission comes to you from Vancouver, Washington. You will hear from my guest, Allie Magyar, founder and CEO of Hubb, an event management platform that gives planners a single place to collect, manage, and market their events content. She is a highly motivated entrepreneur with a passion for food photography and the outdoors. Allie, talk to me a little bit about your childhood. Where'd you grow up? What was your family like? What did you want to do when you grew up? If you knew any of that at that time, what was a young Allie like?
Yeah, well, I've been a Northwest girl all my life, so always between Seattle and Portland. And I don't think I will ever move out of the Northwest. I just absolutely love it here. My family was very supportive. We lived very busy lives. So I've got two brothers and two sisters in addition to me, and most of them were very, very active in sports or school activities, and I'm the oldest, so there was definitely a lot going on all the time.
That's awesome. Yeah, Northwest, I'm right there with you.
And when I grew up, I didn't really know what I wanted to be. Back then, there really wasn't a lot of options in the events world. I knew that I loved organizing things. I was always class president or ASB president and was captain of the basketball team and, organized a lot of different elements throughout high school, but there wasn't an events degree back then. And so I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be an English and a music teacher. And I went to school one quarter and really quickly decided that was not what I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing. I really didn't know what I wanted to do.
That's good. Well, you still ended up in an incredible spot, so that's good. So on the school note, talk to me a little bit about that. Where did you go to school? So you weren't focused on events, but was technology a part of your learnings? Was that something that you were interested in your younger years? What was the schooling like for you?
Well, I think technology really wasn't a thing back then. According to my parents, only drug dealers had cell phones. And actually, not even cell phones, it was pagers back then.
Yeah.
And, as I get into high school in my senior year was when AOL started and you used to have to dial the phone. So tech really wasn't a thing. But there was just a lot around that I found enjoyment in around meaningful experiences for people. I was sort of collecting and managing the budget to get us to a really cool trip for band, or thinking about what our class party would look like, or, bring up any type of situation where you're trying to bring people together. And I think that's where I really found my niche. And my mom likes to tease me that started even in third grade when I had to rearrange our entire house for my birthday party that everyone had to come to. So I think that's just always been core to who I am. But there wasn't a lot of influences in those early days in regards to technology or, even really thinking about leadership positions in large companies or small companies. So I think it was very organic in terms of how our world shifted and changed and some of the opportunities that then presented themselves as I continued to grow up.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I know a little bit about your history and the places that you worked, especially coming right out of school. Can you tell our listeners about your journey in business, how you got to where you are today? I know you've purchased a business, you've founded a business, there's all kinds of cool stuff in there. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, after graduating high school and going to college for 1 quarter and really realizing that I didn't want to be an English or a music teacher, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I sort of floundered a little bit. But what I did know is that I loved cars. And so I really sort of dove into my hobbies. And at the age of 18, ended up producing a lifestyle car show here locally at the Clark County Fairgrounds, and had my friends come and help me. And day of, we ended up with thousands of people coming at the gate paying $15, and my dad running back and forth the Safeway trying to get money orders because he was terrified having $45,000 in cash. And so for me, that was the start of my entrepreneurial journey. I sort of looked at that and thought, okay, I did this successfully. Can I take this money? And any 18-year-old, I'm pretty sure, would just go blow it on a trip or, all the clothes or whatever. But I looked at that and I did a little bit of that, but also took the money and reinvested it. And one show turned to 2 shows, turned to 4 shows, turned to 10 shows over 6 years. And I really started to learn what running a business was about, because it was just me running that business. And then on the weekends, I'd fly my friends all over the country to help me produce these shows. But the business acumen side of it and having to put the pieces together and understand what success meant to grow a business, that was sort of the school of hard knocks for me of really starting my first business.
Wow. Every time I hear that story, I'm still blown away, because I think about where I was at age 18, way in a much different place than that. It's so impressive. And then you moved on from there to Dynamic Events, right?
I did, yeah. So I took a job at Dynamic Events in 2004, and it was an entry-level job as an event manager, but I saw that as an opportunity for me to learn something new. So I knew about the trade show side of it from producing car shows, but I wanted to do something a little bit different in events. And so taking a job at Dynamic Events gave me the corporate perspective, because they were mainly managing corporate events. And so I started there in 2004 and then really took that as an opportunity to learn about technology, because that's right when registration was starting to become sort of a tech that people were using versus fax machines and mail. And I took the opportunity to learn about people and innovation and sales and marketing there. And so within about 18 months, I really dove in and treated the company like it was my own, and worked really hard. There were about 17 people there when I joined. Worked really hard at growing that company in a very big way, to the point where I felt like I could either leave and do this for myself, or I could buy the current company. And so I started off by going to the owner and letting her know that I was interested in purchasing the company, and I didn't have any money, but that I wanted to purchase the company. And I'd worked really hard to grow it to where it was. And so luckily she decided that she wanted to pursue something different in her life. And so I ended up buying the company, paying it out over 2 years out of the profits that I was generating from working, and started over fresh. And that was in late 2006.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. So you are in the technology space, and, I think that being a woman in any male-dominated industry, especially tech, it presents itself with its own challenges, right? That men don't necessarily have to think about. I think it's getting better. I think it's improving, but I'm just curious, what have your experiences been in the tech industry as a woman? Do you feel like you've experienced obstacles or any of those challenges along the way, and how do you overcome them?
Well, it's interesting. Someone drew this correlation for me a couple of weeks ago where in the car show world, women were not into cars. They modeled for the cars, but they didn't race them. They didn't throw car shows. And to me, I didn't even think about that back then. And the same sort of goes with tech. I think part of it is the Northwest is such an inclusive environment to run and grow a business, and for mentorship. Growing up producing events for Microsoft, I always felt an inclusive environment. There was always support. There was always people willing to help me to understand a concept or to learn something new as it pertained to tech. And so I didn't know any different. So I thought the whole world was sort of like this, of, okay, great. This is what my experience in the Northwest has been. And as Hubb sort of as a technology grew out of Dynamic Events and I pursued venture funding, I think that's when I really realized that we're very fortunate to be in the Northwest and have that inclusive environment, because outside of the Northwest, that's not the case. And so as I went to go raise venture capital, I started looking for how to do it successfully. What do I need to learn? How do I change my pitch? And the data that I found was really daunting. Women own almost half the businesses in the United States, but only receive 2% of the venture funding.
Wow.
So when you look for, other use cases, other people that have done it successfully, it's really hard as a woman. And as I got out there, I talked to over 60 private equity and venture capital companies over about a 6-month span, and was shocked at being in a boardroom and being patted on the head and told, oh, honey, you have a nice lifestyle business, when I'm outperforming all their portfolio companies. Or knowing that there's restricted access to women for capital, saying, yeah, we know typical valuations are X, but we're only willing to give you half that because that's just what feels right to us. Mm-hmm. Knowing that there's limited options for female entrepreneurs and minority entrepreneurs to actually go and get that funding. So it consistently felt like an uphill battle, and a really hard one. It's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. To close a successful round with the right partners that were sort of fair and non-discriminatory, and based it just on the business and the opportunity that the business had in front of it.
Mm. Do you, in that experience, do you see, I feel like in the tech space, especially, you and I have been doing this for a long time with Microsoft and other tech organizations. And I feel like in my career over the last 15 years, I've seen a progression in the right direction, and it has improved. Yeah. Do you see that potential or possibility in the funding space and with what you experience, or how far do we have to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think part of it is changing the conversation. And so a lot of that happened and has been happening in tech, of really talking about the value that diversity brings and how we meet this head on, because tough subjects are tough to talk about. And oftentimes they get swept under the rug because everyone is so worried about saying the wrong thing, even when they have the right intention. And so in the venture capital world, there is a lot of conversation happening, and a lot of women, powerful women, stepping up to help to change that conversation. So things are definitely trending in the right direction. And my encouragement to everyone around me is to continue to talk about it and to continue to change the thought process. I have a 12-year-old daughter, and so when she comes into the business world, I don't even want that to be a consideration for her. It's all things are equal, and it's based on, how valuable is the business idea? What traction have you gotten without, race or gender or any other type of bias sort of limiting your ability to find success.
Yeah, I love that. You literally, when you talked about your daughter, I got goosebumps everywhere. I was like, it's so true. All right, so I'm going to switch it up a little bit here, kind of on the other side of things. So failures, people shy away from that word pretty often, but I think as leaders of an organization, you can't be afraid of it.
Absolutely.
What's your experience with failure? I know for a fact you've experienced it, and I'm curious how you handle it and what that's like for you.
Yeah. Failure is not a bad word. And I think we have been conditioned to think that failure is a bad word. Failure is only negative if you fail and you don't learn from it and you repeat that failure over and over and over. And so for me, failure is an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to do something different, to have an arsenal, behind you of, okay, this is how I'm going to achieve success. So it's like a stepping stone. And I used to be terrified of the word failure. Because I'm a type A personality, I go for it all the time. And so to fail at something is like the worst thing that could happen, was my perception. And I've had to totally rethink that. In my job now as a startup founder and scaling a company to double the size every year, I'm going to screw up a hell of a lot of things. And if I'm terrified of failure, and if I can't deal with failing and then learning and doing something different, I will fail because I'll stay stagnant and I won't actually grow and things won't be successful. And so all throughout my career, I've had massive amounts of failure. That car show business that I was talking about that grew from 1 to 10 shows, well, in the end, that failed. I ended up $100,000 in debt at the age of 24, personal debt, going, I don't have a career. What the hell am I going to do now? And feeling that failure would define me. And I could have sat and let that failure define me. And instead I said, no, screw it. I'm going to go try it again and try again and try again. And in business, well, you know this too, from being a business owner, every month there's some sort of catastrophe happening and there's failure everywhere. And you just, I think being almost 40 is a freeing stage of life where you can just sort of say, I'm still alive. I know what really truly matters in my life. And yeah, this sucked and this hurts a little bit, but I'm going to do something different and use that to move forward to the next thing. So I just see failure now as that's a normal occurrence. And if it's not happening, I'm probably not pushing myself enough. But it takes a lot of training that internal voice in your head and a lot of recognizing failure for what it truly is, which is learning.
Yeah, that's great. And all of this that you're doing, these things you're talking about, it's all in a very fast moving industry. I mean, it's not even just technology, it's event technology, which I think is a whole nother added layer of complexity and stress. How do you stay current and relevant in that fast changing industry and really being able to stay on top of trends and future technologies and expectations of your end users?
Well, I think having my whole career for the last 20 years has been in the events industry. So I'm uniquely positioned to really understand what we need, and not only what we need now, but what we need in the future. But a lot of it is staying close to the industry. It's staying really close to the agency side, understanding what they're doing, what they're struggling with, what is the strategies that they're currently employing. I think the number one thing to staying relevant and current is a thirst for knowledge. It's reading, talking to people, speaking at events, just sort of making sure you have your pulse on all of the areas around you. And so that's what I attempt to do, is just continue to learn from those around me. And I am so fortunate to have just an incredible network of people that I can continue to learn from every day.
Yeah, that's great. Let's see. So a lot of women, we've talked a little bit about women in technology and, what it takes to kind of thrive in this industry. And I think that there's this balance. Some people call it a work-life balance. There's different ways of looking at it, I suppose. But, you're a mom, you've got 2 kids, you're running this company, you have a very active life. Before we jumped on this, you were telling me that you've been on the road for 3 weeks. And I mean, that's a lot, Allie, and you managed to pull it off. I'm sure not without its stresses and hardship, but how do you balance it all? How do you kind of stay sane and keep yourself going with all that?
Yeah, it's funny. So many people look at people from the outside in terms of what they post on Facebook or sort of what they read in the news. And what they don't see is me coming home from the flight yesterday and collapsing at home in bed, like not able to function because I'm so tired, right? There's a trade-off. It's energy. And what I believe in is just a balanced life. And work is a part of your life, home is a part of your life, physical fitness is a part of your life. All these different elements just play into your life. And I think it's so important that every person figures out, what does balance look like and mean to you? Because you will either burn out from doing all the wrong things, or not feel fulfilled from doing all the wrong things, or you'll figure out, how do I rest and restore my soul so that I can give everything to all the different areas of my life that are important to me? And I think for me, that's been the personal soul searching that I've been on over the last couple of years, because it is tough. And when you're in a crazy startup, it just feels like the world is ending every single day, and so it can consume you. But I still have a family. I've got 2 kids. I've got a husband, and if I'm not fully being present at home, I'm also failing in that area as well. And so some of it is really asking yourself, what are the things that I uniquely can do, and what can I uniquely contribute to, and let the other stuff go. So the art of saying no is so fabulous. If you are asked out to dinner and it's with people that maybe you don't really care about seeing all that much, but you feel obligated because you haven't seen them in a long time, say no. Go home and find someone that fills your heart, right? Or if there's activities at school that your kids come home with a laundry list of all these different things that you need to volunteer for. Pick the one that's the most meaningful for you and your kids and be fully present and fully do that one thing versus half-assing a bunch of them. And so for me, it's all been just about really identifying at my core, what does a balanced life mean to me? How do I rest and restore myself? So I know if I don't get 8 hours of sleep and if I don't work out every day, I'm a hot mess and then I'm no good to anyone. And so I think it's a lot of sort of internal soul searching of knowing what that balance means to you and then having the courage to be able to prioritize the things that are most meaningful in your life. And no one ever gets it right. It's a continual journey of every day reprioritizing. But in the events world, I spent way too many years being caught up in anxiety and stress of that world all day, every day, to the point where I could never be with my family because I was so stressed out. And, that is not a life that I wanted to live. And so you have to sometimes have the courage to say, this isn't cutting it. And of course, thinking everything's going to fall apart around you, like 100% sure that if you make the choice to just be present, that everything's going to fall apart. But the funny thing is, it doesn't. And you find ways of coping and dealing. And our people champion here at Hubb, she said something that I think about all the time, which is you don't have any qualms about working on a Friday night or a Saturday or not going to a baseball game because you have this urgent client thing to be done. But if I ask you to go to a movie on a Tuesday, there is no way in hell you're going to do it. And so, and to feel okay with it.
Yeah.
And that statement has just stayed with me for years because it is so true. I work my ass off. So why should I care if Tuesday at 2:00, if I take a couple of hours to go be with my family, I know I'm going to meet my commitments on the other side. Why am I berating myself for not being able to take that time and to actually be fulfilled in whatever activity it is that I'm choosing to do?
That's so smart. So do you have kind of a daily schedule that you stick to help keep some of that stuff in check? Or is it just like a mental thing that you're constantly having to remind yourself?
I think for me, I've discovered a variety of things that help. I am very much a routine person, which makes it hard when I'm traveling. So I try to carry that routine into when I travel as well. But I calendar everything because if I don't calendar it, if I don't make time for it, no one else is going to respect it. And so I have my workouts calendared, the same workouts every week, every day of the week at the same time. They're on my calendar. I've given myself enough time to make sure that I have those in there. I think it's also just about a mental change as well. So one of the things that's helped me the most is I stopped sleeping with my cell phone in my room. And I read this book that was Living Life with the Heart of Buddha, and it's by Tara Brach. And it really sort of talks about high performers and how we are living with constant fear and anxiety and feeling like we're not enough. And it's about spending more time in intentional, you could call it meditation or quiet, however you phrase it. But it's about welcoming those thoughts in and being okay with just being, which is, one of those sort of hippie things where you're like, that's never going to happen. But I read this book and I realized that every night before I went to sleep, the last thing I was doing was checking my phone for urgent emails. Who the hell cares if they're emailing me at 10 o'clock at night? Like, that shouldn't matter. And the first thing I was doing as soon as I woke up, my alarm would go off on my phone. I'd turn my alarm off and I'd look at my emails and look at my day and instantly get stressed. And so about 2 years ago, I said, I'm not doing this anymore. And I leave my phone in the kitchen. So as soon as I come home at night, my phone goes into its charging place and I don't touch it again. And so I can actually be present. And when I go to sleep, it's because I'm calm and I go to sleep. And when I wake up in the morning, I am able to spend that time myself. I get ready without the stress, without the pressure on my heart. That comes later, but I'm allowing myself time to restore and be there for myself before I get into that crazy world. So I've been able to sort of create this space of calm in my personal life. And then that empowers me to be able to go tackle the crazy, because the work world is never going to be anything but crazy. I sort of have come to the realization
Yeah.
it's just the way it goes. But so what I need to do is make sure that I have the energy and I have the emotional capacity to be able to absorb that and deal with it, but not let it rule me. And so just that simple act of the routine of not allowing my phone into my room has really helped me to achieve some of that balance.
Yeah, that is a bold move. I mean, that's not, it's not an easy thing to do. I think we've all as a society just become so accustomed to having that access all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely commend you on that. That's a great tip. Outside of your day job, so you mentioned exercise, but I'm curious, what other passions do you have outside of work? I follow you on Instagram and I see all your amazing photos of the beautiful meals that you cook and things like that. But, how do you take care of yourself? What feeds your soul?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, in my job, it's a lot of execution, numbers, spreadsheets, data. And I really miss the creative side of events. And so for me, I've figured out that I need some creative outlet. So on the weekends, there is no better place than spending the entire weekend in my kitchen. So I love cooking. I love food photography. I love sort of the creative outlet of color combinations and textures. And so that for me is probably one of the ways that I spend the most time if I think about how I really enjoy myself. But part of it is also exercise for me. I found that, if I exercise, most days I actually exercise about 90 minutes or more. If I am getting my stress out by boxing or beating something up, lifting really heavy weight, it actually gets my mind to calm and to center. And so exercise for me is a part of my daily routine of just sort of how I keep the adrenaline that's sort of constantly pumping when you're in this environment in check and under control.
Boxing. When did you pick that up?
A couple years ago.
That's awesome. Did you take classes or?
Oh yeah. My boxing instructor, I never wanted to hit him. And so he'd be like, come on, let's get in the ring. Hit me. And I'd always be like, no, I can hit a bag or I can hit, the mitts, but I don't want to hit you. And then he hit me and I just all out went for it. I was like, screw this. You're going to hit me. I am going to take you down.
That's awesome. I love it. So do you have a punching bag at home or do you actually go to a gym and still box?
Both. Yeah.
I love it. Who inspires you or who has inspired you throughout your career and growth?
Oh, there's such a wide variety of people because I sort of gain inspiration from so many different sources. I think overall, from a venture standpoint, there's a gentleman here in Portland his name is Nitin Rai. And Nitin's whole purpose in life is helping minority entrepreneurs to be successful and to find funding. And so as I've gone through this journey over the last 3 or 4 years with raising money for Hubb and doing venture capital, he really has been there to share his own entrepreneurial journey and what he's learned all the way through the process, and really given me a lot of support and the energy to keep going and keep fighting. Early in my career, there were so many people at Microsoft that were incredibly inspirational and supportive to me as we grew up. We mentioned earlier sort of growing up in tech and especially being at Microsoft and watching Julia White over the years sort of grow in her career and now sort of seeing her take the stage as one of the top people at Microsoft. I think from afar, for me, that's been a huge inspiration because that was back when women didn't hold leadership positions in tech companies, and she really rose up through the ranks. And then also people like Vivian from Microsoft, who I've had the opportunity to work with over the years. And there's so many people that in working with them, you learn so much. And Vivian's one of those people that taught me a lot about leadership and how to really form a team, how to make sure that everyone on the team has a voice and is kept well informed. And so I learned a lot about high performance teams from her as well. And she really mentored me throughout my event management days as we worked together and worked on some really large events together. So I could keep going on and on and on, but just a lot of really incredible people that have taken the time to share their stories, to provide mentorship, to provide guidance and honesty too, which is such a huge part of being able to grow.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I find that mentorship piece is very valuable. And, sometimes trying to find the right mentor or, wait to work with a mentor can be so challenging. Have you had like a formal mentor before that you've worked with, or has it mostly just been kind of from a distance?
It's mostly been from a distance. I mean, I think about the people in my community in my life, and it's pretty organic. I'll call up and say, hey, can you tell me about this one thing that's going on? I think from a mentee standpoint, what you really have to do is you have to be willing to ask, and you have to be curious. You have to really honestly be interested in what's going on around you and the people around you. It's funny, over the years, I'd always be worried about calling up someone because I didn't want to inconvenience them or bother them. And even as we got into this venture funding, I was like, oh, I don't want to call them and waste their time. I don't know what I'm doing. But what I found is asking the question is actually a huge kudo to the person that you're asking. It's that they value your perspective and your experience enough. And so what I found is, regardless of the person that I'm calling, if you approach it in the right way of, I'm so impressed with what you've accomplished in this area, and I'm wondering if you could spend 10 minutes talking to me about X, whatever it is, that is a great way to intro a conversation and actually start to do some incredible learning. And then if there's other people that you're looking for advice from, or different situations or scenarios, it's, do you know anyone that has expertise in this area that you could connect me to? And so I think it's a lot on the mentee to really think about, what do you want to learn and who are the people you want to learn from, and approaching it in the right way, because you'll be amazed what you can find when you really go to people and admire what it is that they're accomplishing and want to learn from them.
That's great. We touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to just ask you directly. What drives you? What motivates you? What gets you up in the morning to push forward and do all these amazing things that you're doing?
Yeah. For me, it's sort of just been inherent in who I've always been and my kids get so sick of me saying this. It's like, if you're going to do something, you just do it well. Like, if you're going to make a choice to make an effort, then you do it to 100%. Even if you end up not wanting to do it in the process. And I think that's sort of a mantra that I just have always had my entire life. I had a lot of, growing up, my dad was an entrepreneur as well. And so watching him work, he put me to work when I was in third grade building first aid kits, and I earned like 25 cents per first aid kit that I would put together. So a lot of it was that I felt accomplished by executing, by doing things. Now that can also have negative effects, because then you think your worth is only based on actually executing. And so as I've gotten older, it's become more about being present as well. And I think that's part of doing something to 100%. It's not only doing it, but it's enjoying the journey of doing it as well. And so for me, you really defining your own core values. People ask you to describe yourself in a couple of words. And for me, grit has always been something super important. The ability to get back up time and time again. And I'm pretty competitive, so grit goes along well with that. Because if someone tells you you aren't going to do it, it's like, oh, screw you. Yeah, I'm going to totally do this.
That's great.
And passion is another. It's, if I'm going to wake up, I want to wake up passionate about the people that I work with and passionate about what it is that I'm doing. So I think it's really defining some of the core values of, if you never had to work again a day in your life, what would be important for you? Like what mantra would you live by? What are the things that are going to drive you in that world? And then figuring out how to incorporate those in your day-to-day life.
So coming out of this, with this podcast, part of our intention is to get this into the ears of younger women who are passionate about science, technology, math, anything in STEM.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe a little apprehensive about it. And, there's like this national, bigger conversation about this space that can be a little intimidating, especially for women. And as it currently stands, the drop-off rate, as you know, is really high, right around middle school. So just from your experience in being in this space, if those young women were here with us right now and you had the chance to actually talk to them, what would you say? What would your advice be? How would you encourage them?
Yeah, well, I have a 12-year-old, so a daughter, so it's very relevant. I think a lot of it is the feeling equal part. And a lot of that comes from conversations that we as adults control. It's providing the environment and the encouragement and the role models for them to see that it is possible. And not only that it's possible, but that it's fun and that it can be different and engaging. And so a lot of it is changing the conversation. So I would look at it and say, well, what could you do with this that would be so incredibly exciting? Because I think sometimes correlating, my daughter hates math. And so she comes home and honestly, I don't even know how to do her math. So I told her teacher, I'm like, I can run 2 different companies and the P&Ls for these huge events, and I cannot do a 6th grade's math. So, I think some of it is correlating the work that they're doing now to what they potentially could do in the future. And so whether that's using role models of people in different industries, I think it's a lot of sort of telling the story to people about why it matters and how you can change the world based on these platforms. And it used to be an option, but I really don't know that it's an option anymore. Our world runs on technology. And so if you can really say, okay, you want to be a fashion designer. Well, what if you were able to create an app that showed people what clothes they should be wearing based on their favorite music? Or you can come up with all sorts of different scenarios so that at least they have optionality. And that's a word that I believe really strongly in. In the end, they may decide that they want to be a clothing designer and they want to have their hands dirty and be cutting and sewing. And that is incredible because that's such a unique talent. But I want them to make that decision because they have the option to make the decision, and they could just as easily choose to build an app and to take over the world. And so being able to give them that education and that idea of here's 2 different paths, let's just give you all the information so you can make an informed choice, I think helps to tell the story to keep people more engaged through some of the 6th grade math all the way up to where they actually get to start doing things. And some of that is actually evident now with coding camps and different ways of using technology where they can actually see the output immediately. And so they start to understand the value.
That's great. Does your daughter do coding camps or any of that stuff? Is she interested in it?
We actually just had a Bring Your Kid to Work day here at Hubb.
Cool.
It was just so well put together. Our office manager, Christy, just did such an incredible job. And part of it was bringing in our development team and actually doing a coding camp for the kids. So
cool.
It was, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, what's next for you? I mean, you do so much and you've done so much. I feel like you could just stop now and be like, I am accomplished. And, but I know you better than that. And I know you've probably got something going on. Like, what's your next big thing? What are you working on?
Yeah, well, I think being in a fast growing startup is an education like none other. I was just telling one of my best friends yesterday that I love this because I am learning every single day, and it feels so good. And of course, I'm dropping all these balls because I'm learning, so I don't know what I'm doing. So, you have to balance that. But for me right now, it's just about how can I continue to scale this organization and scale our mission and our vision to our industry. So that's a big focus for me. But I think also now a big part of my purpose in life is to help change the conversation for others. And so having been a part of the 2% that have successfully raised venture capital, a lot of that provides me with a platform to be able to help others on how to do it successfully and that it is possible. And so a lot of my personal purpose now is in sharing what I have learned in a 20-year career in a variety of different companies and a variety of different growths and failures, and being able to help other early stage entrepreneurs. And so I'm finding that a really exciting piece of my day to day, as well as being able to help coach and mentor others of getting to that next phase.
That's great. I'm excited to see what comes from all of that. All right, my last question for you, Allie. If Allie Magyar saved the world, what would it be like?
I think I asked you before whether I could actually answer this question the way that I wanted to answer it. Because if I actually saved the world, it would be with the world's largest brunch with lots of mimosas, and we would be listening to Norah Jones and Paula Abdul. And that would be the way that everyone would come together.
I love it. That's perfect. And I would be there for sure. That sounds amazing. Did you say Norah Jones and Paula Abdul?
Yes,
oh my absolutely.
God. Norah Jones to start, Paula Abdul once we get a few mimosas in us.
There you go. Oh my gosh. Well, Allie, I love you to death. Thank you so much for participating in this. And I can't wait to see your next adventure.
Thanks for the opportunity. I really enjoyed being here.